UFC Fight Night, Derrick Lewis and Tallison Teixeira. We are less than a week away, and I'm going to be giving my full card predictions and breakdown for every single fight on this card. I just got back from the UFC Hall of Fame. I had the opportunity to display my GOAT list, and the GOAT list that I'm talking about is that new top 50 fighters of all time. You guys can check that out. I uploaded it yesterday. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section on that video. If you haven't already, check that out, the long-awaited MMA GOAT list, the newest edition. Without further ado, let's talk about this card. We've got Derrick Lewis, and a UFC fighter that only has one fight under his belt in Tallison Teixeira. And speaking of belts, if your belt is, getting too tight and you're too fat and you want to lose some weight and you want to get lean and mean, and you're tired of eating your meager, mundane diet of chicken and broccoli and broiled fish and cauliflower, you can check out the Real Food Cookbook, because that'll give you whole and hearty meals like brownies, homemade cookies, chimichurri steak, tortilla de batata, butter chicken, mango lassis, crafty recipes on how to make the best potato fries and plantains, and a lot more comfort foods from around the world made with whole and unprocessed ingredients. If you guys are interested in that Real Food Cookbook, check that out. It'll help you get lean and mean. Or if you want to bulk, it'll just give you a healthy bulking diet. Depends on how many cookbook meals you want to eat. So make sure to use code MMA for 30% off if you're interested in a discount. The link is in the description. Let's get into this card. The first fight of the night, Fatima Klein versus Melissa Martinez. I did an hour-and-a-half breakdown on Melissa Martinez's inside leg kick, and we actually discussed that on the boxing channel. I did a short on Fatima Klein's ability to navigate range control as well, which was really good. And both of these fighters have great, excellent outside foot battle skills. So I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds. If you saw it on the boxing channel, you guys know I always break down one of these fights on the boxing channel before. You may ask why you uploaded it on the boxing channel, by the way. My boxing fans don't necessarily like MMA, so they're only interested in the most hardcore MMA fights with the best technique. And these girls don't have the best technique, but they're hardcore type of fighters, right? You only know them if you're a hardcore of the sport. So you could check that out. But I'm going to go with Melissa Martinez. I think she's going to have a slight reach disadvantage, a slight leg reach disadvantage, and she's going to have a slight height disadvantage. And you may say, well, those are all disadvantages. I understand that, but I honestly think this is going to be one of those fights where the one with the disadvantages comes out on top. So let's get on to the next one. Mitch Ramirez versus Mike Davis. This is easy. I'm going with Mike Davis. Mike Davis is very good with his grappling. He's a powerhouse. Mike Davis just had a really close fight with Farasiam. We know that he's a great grappler. He's got a big blast double leg. He hits pretty hard. He's more experienced in the UFC. And Mitch Ramirez, until this guy shows us something impressive, I'm not picking him to win a fight against Mike Davis. Mike Davis is just that good. Okay? I'm going with Mike Davis. By the way, I just wanted to say this. I saw the predictors tracker. There's a channel that tracks all the MMA YouTubers' predictions, and I was very surprised to see that I was actually amongst the top 5 most profitable pickers. Now, you guys know me. I don't bet, and I don't tell you guys who to bet on, but I'm just going to say that actually was pretty surprising. If you were to bet on all of my picks, you probably would have done well this year. So that's just something interesting. I didn't expect to make the cut. People call me Mr. 57% because, last year I wasn't doing so hot in the beginning of the year, but I'm actually doing pretty well, it seems. But let's get on to the next one. Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Valter Walker. I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu by lighter man skill, even though, and I've said this before, once you've had 3 fights after moving up a weight class, you no longer really have lighter man skill. You kind of just get morphed into that division. But either way, because you get used to fighting those fighters now and you're not used to fighting faster guys anymore. But I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu because he's just actually in shape. He's actually athletic. And He's fast, unlike Valter Walker, who's one of the slowest heavyweights in the game. Now, Valter Walker has improved since that debut that he had against Lucas Bresky, where he lost and he looked like a walrus. He was, just blubbering around the octagon. Since then, he's actually got himself a couple of good performances, finishes, submissions. But Kennedy Nzechukwu is still going to be too much for him on the feet. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage. He is going to be the same height. Actually, Valter Walker, Johnny Walker's brother, of course, he's a big dude. He's actually going to be taller here. But Kennedy Nzechukwu, reach advantage, speed advantage, kickboxing advantage. And if he's okay with his grappling at light heavyweight and is able to get finishes over people at light heavyweight and do okay on the ground, I think that he'll have no problem with a guy like Valter Walker, who may be one of the plottiest heavyweights. I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu by a first or second round KO. Probably second round. I think Valter Walker is going to tough it out in the first. Maybe he'll even get himself a takedown. Nothing will happen with it. Kennedy will eventually overwhelm him. The investment shots he lands to the body, kicks to the legs, those will eventually slow Valter down, and that'll open up opportunities for some good punches to land upstairs. And I think Kennedy KOs him in the second round. Let's get on to the next one. Lauren Murphy versus Eduarda Moura. This is a scary matchup for Eduarda Moura. Lauren Murphy, bad to the bone. Eduarda Moura, sort of like the new Amanda Nunes on the block. I've been wrong about Eduarda Moura before. I have actually picked Veronica Hardy to beat her, and she was able to win. Lauren Murphy is just not that good. I mean, was she ever great? I don't know. 16-6. She feels like she's been around for decades. I can't believe she fought for the title once, or maybe it was a number one contenders fight. But I remember she fought for the title, or she fought one of these actual good fighters in WMMA and got absolutely destroyed. And I think Eduarda Moura 11-1, actually a pretty promising prospect. I think she's going to win this via being closer to her prime. As we get on to Chidi Njokuani versus Jake Matthews. Now, this is tough to pick because Jake Matthews is like one of these CPU style of fighters. The way that I would describe his level of difficulty is he's like a CPU fighter on hard mode on UFC 4 to UFC 5. So not pro, not legendary, but hard mode, where if you're an NPC at the game, you might actually lose, but you'll give him a tough scrap. If he's fighting against another fucking shitty NPC on easy mode, he'll win. But Chidi Njokuani is like the equivalent to someone who may not be like top 1,000 players in the world, but he's like top 10,000, and he'll have no issue beating a Jake Matthews. So I'm going to go with Chidi Njokuani. Listen, Jake Matthews...
Sometimes we think, oh man, Jake Matthews is actually really good now. He's coming into his own, but...
That was actually just one performance that he had against Andre Fialho. That was like years ago, and Fialho is no longer in the UFC. He got cut. Was he really good to begin with? Outside of fighting marauders that have no defense, which Chidi Njokuani is not a marauder with no defense. He's a long-rangey kickboxer who kicks very hard, has a lot of experience, pretty dangerous. Suspect gas tank, but is Jake Matthews pushing a pace? No. Jake Matthews is never really pushing a pace. Jake Matthews is fighting the hands, parrying the hands, pop right here, pop right there, a couple of kicks around. He's a guy that's going to throw 25 strikes around. He's not really going to put himself in harm's way, put himself at risk. And I just think that the rate, if you're going to be a Jake Matthews style of fighter, where you're good enough not to get KO'd or absolutely schooled, but you're not actually like good enough to truly impose your will and like fuck people up, I think that Chidi Njokuani, who also has decent output, who has more finishing ability, but is going to have a crazy reach advantage, 7-inch reach advantage, as well as a 4-inch height advantage. I'm going with Chidi Njokuani. Jake Matthews has shown his ability to wrestle before, but Chidi has okay takedown defense. And unless Jake Matthews has an amazing fight, it would have to be one of his best wins ever for him to go out there, mix it up, get the takedown, land a couple of strikes upstairs. I just think that Jake Matthews has to be absolutely perfect. Stars have to align, whereas Chidi Njokuani just has to sort of show up and not be totally fucking injured. Okay? I'm going with Chidi. Reach advantage, speed advantage, imposing his will advantage. Actually pretty good with his clinch striking, too, if Jake Matthews closes the distance. I just think he's going to land more strikes here. I'm going to go with Chidi by a decision. Let's get on to the next one. Max Griffin versus Chris Curtis. The next gen legendary CPU fighter, Max Griffin. He's one of these CPUs. He's like a CPU that has everything at 50, output 50, like effort in his power 50. He doesn't put himself in harm's way at all. 50 chin, 50 everything. 50 chin is actually terrible in a video game, but like he just doesn't do anything. I'm sorry. I'm going with Chris Curtis. This is the easiest fight in the entire card. Max Griffin, he's had one fight with Neil Magny where he actually had like a nice imposing his will moment, but he just goes out there, floats around, throws 3 leg kicks around, 5 punches around, and nothing else. Whereas Chris Curtis, great boxing, good pressure. He's actually pretty good with his output too. And even though Max Griffin is younger and Chris Curtis has been taking a lot of damage recently, he's gotten TKO'd against Kopylov, and he had a war with not Arnold Allen, Brendan Allen. He's just fought and beat and had close fights with much better levels of competition. This should be easy for Chris Curtis. I'm going to go with Chris Curtis by TKO. I think Chris Curtis is going to knock Max Griffin out now. Maybe he'll bring out the best Max Griffin ever, who does have potential to have some speedy hands. But again, it's just like Chris Curtis is used to a real fight. Max Griffin is used to a NPC style of fight. I'm going with Chris Curtis. He's winning this shit. Easy pick. As we get on to Junior Tafa versus Tuco Tokkos, everyone's going crazy. Oh, Junior Tafa's in shape. Oh, Junior Tafa's shredded. Doesn't matter. Tuco Tokkos with the lighter man skill. Listen, I know that Tuco Tokkos had like a 3-minute moment against Navajo Sterling, and it looked like the tide was turning, and maybe people think, oh, wait a second, he's actually pretty good. But we do have to be fair. He did get dominated for most of that fight. It wasn't even close. But listen, there were glimmers of hope. He shows toughness. He shows that he has a good gas tank and that he will not quit. He may not be talented, and Junior Tafa is actually okay with his kickboxing. But I'm going to go with the gritty guy that doesn't give up on himself, that's used to fighting light heavyweights, that's used to being in the cage with faster fighters, whereas Junior Tafa, he's used to being in the cage with tubby guys, with tubs. So I'm going to go with Tuco Tokkos. I mean, you may think, no, Junior Tafa's going in there, he's hitting like an absolute truck. He's a heavyweight, man. But you guys know how it goes. Tokkos is going to be fast. Tokkos is going to just be a little bit better at pushing a pace. And I think it comes down to this. Listen, I know that light heavyweights and heavyweights spar all the time, but you know how it is in gyms. I mean, you've been to gyms. The heavyweights kind of do their own thing. They're on different kinds of time, right? Everyone's in the gym, everyone's grinding, and then here comes Sergey Pavlovich, and he's popping mitts around, and you got Marcos Rogerio de Lima, and you got freaking Blagoy Ivanov, and they're out there by themselves. They're in their own heavyweight world. Tuco Tokkos he's used to training with, actually okay fighters. And I think that'll make a difference. Like, he's just going to be able to push a pace here. And what does he actually do well? I don't know. We know Tafa's got kickboxing, but this is one of the Tafa bros. This is the kind of guy you could push over like this, and that's how you can take him down. So, these Tafas aren't known for grappling. Tuco Tokkos he's great nowhere, but average everywhere, and I think that's good enough to beat a heavyweight that ain't that great. Okay? This is another lighter man's, dude. I love the lighter man skill. I love all of these fighters that are changing divisions. We've got a lot of them on this card. Vitor Petrino, great decision, by the way. Excellent decision. And couldn't have asked for a better layup in his heavyweight debut. Austen Lane has had one of the least successful careers ever in the UFC. I feel bad for him. I feel really bad for him. He's just like, oh, man, dude. Like, he kind of looks like Bilal Muhammad, bro. I just noticed that. But either way, dude, Vitor Petrino, even though he lost to Anthony Smith and he's like, green and he's not the smartest fighter and he can't really put it all together that well, he's just talented, right? He hits hard. He's athletic. He may not be the best wrestler, but he can take you down with ease. He's got the skill required if you pair it with his athleticism and strength to where he can just bulldoze anyone that isn't a really solid grappler. He can bulldoze them to the ground. We've seen him get submissions. We've seen him win fights by mixing in the takedown. Again, he hits hard. He's kind of fast. And he got chinned in his last outing, got chinned real bad in his last outing, and that's why he's moving up. But again, who did he get knocked out by? Jacoby. And it was in the 3rd round after they were having somewhat of a competitive fight. I know he got chinned, but if you're able to keep it somewhat competitive with Jacoby, Austen Lane, who doesn't have a single win in the UFC, I don't think, and he's just been KO'd every time, this is going to be easy for Vitor Petrino. I'm going to go with Vitor Petrino first round KO. We don't need to look at the reach. We don't need to look at the height. Vitor, He's made it to the Smith fight. He's made it to the Jacoby fight. He has the wins needed to do that at light heavyweight. Now he's fighting the guy that has had the worst run at heavyweight. I don't think he's got a single win. This is easy. Vitor Petrino is going to destroy Austen Lane. Tough for Austen Lane. Very tough for him. Now it's going to be an uphill battle for Nate Landwehr. Listen, I know Nate Landwehr is great at making it scrappy, and he can hit kind of hard, and he's got some good frog kicks. He's sort of like a Jim Miller with his kicking game, but I just think Morgan Charriere is better everywhere. Faster, hits harder, more athletic, more well-rounded. Nate Landwehr has a couple of submissions in his UFC career, but this is going to be tough. I go with Morgan Charriere, and I'm going to pick him to win this by a KO. All right, I just think it's a good fight for him. This is not the level of comp that Nate Landwehr is beating. So let's get on to the next one. Calvin Kattar, old man Kattar versus Steve Garcia. Tough for Kattar. I'm going to go with Steve Garcia. Prime Kattar, I pick him to win this fight. I think he would control the range really well, and that's what you have to be worried about with Steve Garcia is he is the definition of a marauder. He's a kill or be killed fighter. He goes out on a shield, and in his last 5 fights, I think he's been KO'd once, but he's had like 4 flatline KOs as well that he's been on the right side of. He's sleeping people out cold, and he's super fast. He's got a long reach, and even though Calvin Kattar looked okay in the 3rd round against Yusuf Salau, it's clear that he slowed down a bit. Now, I still think that Yusuf Salau's kickboxing style and speed would always be an issue for Kattar, but we can't sit there and act like Kattar is in his prime anymore. He's looking slower these days. I think the wars have caught up to him. He was out of the cage for a few years. He had to get surgery on his knee after he injured it in the Arnold Allen fight. Now he's going in there against a much faster, more powerful guy who's just got a lot of confidence coming into this, given that he's been knocking people out left and right. Kattar's been losing left and right. He's been on the couch. I mean, even though Steve Garcia could get KO'd, we don't really see Kattar knock a lot of people out, right? But also, we don't really see Kattar get knocked out a lot. Has Kattar ever really been chinned? I don't think so. I don't think Kattar's actually ever been knocked out. We've seen him get beat up by Max Holloway, but I don't think he was dropped in that entire fight. Against Arnold Allen, I don't think he was dropped. And against Zalal, I don't think he was dropped. So this will actually be impressive if Steve Garcia can knock Kattar out, because he still is pretty durable. So it is a little bit risky, actually, because we've not seen Steve Garcia really have to test himself or prove himself in the 2nd and 3rd against an experienced fighter. So this should get interesting if it goes into the 2nd and 3rd round. We may actually see the crafty vet Calvin Kattar win. But I'm still leaning 55% Steve Garcia. Momentum, prime, hits like a truck. Calvin Kattar, I don't think he's going to win this fight. Okay, let's get on to the next one. Stephen Thompson versus Gabriel Bonfim. People were not happy about this fight announcement. However, I actually think that Thompson's got a chance to win this. I know he's coming off of a brutal KO loss, but he's had a lot of time to recover. I think that even though, you know what? Fuck that. I'm actually going with Stephen Thompson. I actually think that this is a similar matchup. I think that Bonfim is worse everywhere. And Thompson was actually getting up to his feet. And that's actually what's making me pick Thompson, because this is the thing. I was going to say Bonfim, he's got good enough striking to be able to mix it up and land okay upstairs, and he's got good enough grappling to be able to get the takedowns. But Buckley's actually showed pretty good control, pretty good ground game, good ground and pound, and not even he was able to keep Thompson down. We saw him ragdoll Thompson in moments just with takedowns, but every single time Thompson was able to pop right back up to his feet. I actually picked Buckley to win that by TKO with ground and pound, because I've seen Bilal do it and whatnot, but Buckley wasn't able to do that. Buckley was losing that fight and needed the KO in the 3rd. I don't think Bonfim gets the KO. I know that Thompson may not have the same chin, but he's always been pretty durable, and I don't think he's just going to completely lose his chin. He's still going to have some good speed because he's a karate guy, and even in old age, all of these karate style of fighters have good speed. And Bonfim, for the most part, I know he's tall, but he's a boxer. He's not a great kicker, and it's really difficult to outbox Stephen Thompson, because unless you've got the explosivity of Buckley and you can leap into a shot, which Bonfim doesn't really do that often. He's more of a rangy 1-2 sort of guy. I think it's going to be hard for him to consistently hit Thompson. I think Thompson wins this. I think he will get taken down by Bonfim. Bonfim will threaten submissions, but he will not be able to control Thompson. And then on the feet, there will be a lot of time with both of these guys striking, and I do not see Bonfim being good enough to win exchanges. And I do not see him having 20 takedowns in this fight, or I don't see him pushing a pace where he can even shoot about 20 takedowns. He doesn't have the best gas tank. We've seen him gas out in fights before, and actually he's gotten finished because of that. So I'm going with Thompson. I think he's going to win a points battle. I think he's going to outstrike Bonfim. Bonfim will not do enough on the ground to actually get the nod from the judges. Thompson wins this by decision. He was winning the Buckley fight. Buckley is better on the feet. He's more dangerous. He's more lethal. If Bonfim doesn't finish him, I think he's going to get outstruck like Buckley. And I don't see him as a better grappler than Buckley. I think he's maybe slightly worse. So the old head Stephen Thompson is going to get this one done. And yeah, let's get on to the next one. Derrick Lewis versus Tallison Teixeira. I think he's going to Kimura Tallison Teixeira in the first round. Now, I know I talked about Tallison Teixeira's unbelievable leg lock game, but despite Tallison Teixeira's leg lock game, I just think Lewis is a little bit too much when he's got top pressure from the Kimura lock. I'm going to go with Derrick Lewis via submission by a flying Kimura in the first round. I'm just joking. But honestly, guys, I'm going to go with Derrick Lewis. Listen, Derrick Lewis has a style that can work in the UFC against I was about to call Tallison Teixeira fat heavyweight. He's not actually that fat, but he's kind of like a skinny fat heavyweight. You know what I mean? He's like a skinny, fatter version of Stefan Struve. And even though we think of him as being so powerful, why he landed one elbow, like that's enough to let us know that this guy is just smirking people left and right. One elbow. Now, don't get me wrong. I've known that Derrick Lewis is, susceptible to getting put down by elbows. He got put down by a Tai Tuivasa elbow. And every now and then, Derrick Lewis has a fuck it moment in a fight where he gets clipped with something. And even though he doesn't have like a instant bodily reaction going down, you could kind of see in his mind, he's like, fuck it, I'm going to go down, right? That happens sometimes. So he can get hurt. He has been KO'd with an elbow before. But I just think Tallison Teixeira is going to be super respectful. Like, going in there with Justin Tafa and muscling him to the cage, that's one thing. Derrick Lewis is bigger than Tafa. He's stronger than Tafa. And he's got more aura than Tafa because he has the record for KOs at heavyweight. And I think Tallison Teixeira is going to go in there only one fight under his belt in the UFC. He's going to be looking at Derrick Lewis. He's going to have seen all of the highlight reel knockouts that Lewis has. He's going to be thinking about that. He's going to start the fight long rangey. Gotta win the outside foot battle. In reality, he should just fucking go after Derrick Lewis and try to plant an elbow on his face. He should push him up against the fence. But I think Derrick Lewis is going to reverse it. I think that Derrick Lewis is going to be okay in that first exchange if it happens. And I think that after that, Tallison Teixeira is going to, slow it down. And I think that's a mistake. I think if you slow it down with Derrick Lewis and you've got no experience, which Derrick Lewis does, and he's the king of the waiting game, he could just wait. He's going to slow this down to a couple of leg kicks, couple of missed punches around heavyweight fight, and eventually he's going to land his overhand. He's going to spin Tallison Teixeira's head back like he did to Volkov back in the day, even if he's getting slightly outstruck, and he's going to put Tallison Teixeira down. Listen, the UFC seems awfully desperate to push Tallison Teixeira, and I don't look at Derrick Lewis as a solid top 10 guy. He's actually not that great, but time and time again, he's able to prove that he can beat I just don't even remember their names, but Marcos Rogerio de Lima, Nascimentos, right? Now, I don't think Tallison Teixeira is like a Nascimento, but he's not even had any time to really heat up in the UFC. Like, he has more potential than Nascimento. He may even have more potential than Marcos Rogerio de Lima. But either way, he's just not had any time to develop, and we just don't know a lot about him. He may go in there and bulldoze Derrick Lewis. We don't know. He seems kind of fast and whatnot, but every now and then you have a quick heavyweight KO, and you can make a lot of that. I mean, look at Rubelas to Spain. He looked unbelievable in his first couple of UFC fights, and then I think maybe even one UFC fight, and then he got beat by Waldo Cortez Acosta, schooled. So I'm going to go with the vet. I'm going to go with Derrick Lewis. Most KOs in heavyweight history. He's going to land a right hand on Tallison Teixeira. Derrick Lewis, even though he's been knocked out before, it is still kind of hard to put him away. So, I mean, Jilton Almeida couldn't even get him out of there. That was a 5-round fight. Unless Tallison Teixeira wins by KO, he's losing this fight, okay? Because it's going to end by KO, but the more time you give Derrick Lewis, the more likely it is that he wins. And if Tallison Teixeira doesn't win in the first couple of minutes, he's losing this fight by KO. Doesn't have the experience. He's going to gas out after hardly throwing any punches, and that'll be it. Eventually, Lewis will catch him. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Until next time.